Hey, what's up, folks? I'm Winston from HubSpot. Not familiar? Well, they make this show just for you, but they also have a pretty interesting platform that helps you grow your business. Later in the episode, we'll hear from one of HubSpot's customers that offers a unique nightlife experience where you'll sing, you'll dance, and hell, you may even howl. Learn more about how HubSpot can help you grow your business at hubspot.com/customerlove.
Okay. You might have seen this company in an ad on your Instagram feed. Maybe you know them from your bathroom mirror. Or maybe, just maybe, you heard an ad spot from this company on a podcast you were listening to right before this one. Today, we're drilling down on toothbrushes, design, and dental care. Simon Enever is the founder and CEO of Quip, the subscription oral care service known for their toothbrushes and toothpaste. Along with his friend and fellow industrial designer Bill May, Simon saw an opportunity right under his nose: accessible and desirable dental health. These days, the company has over 1 million subscribers. Simon talks about the role brand messaging and voice played early on in the company, how Quip's working with their customers to create better products and healthier habits, and why bringing their toothbrushes into stores is actually the best thing for their customers. I'm Megan Keeney Anderson, and this is The Growth Show. Well, okay, so let me start here, and I'll have to ask you to forgive me, but I would say that the English have not always gotten the best reputation when it comes to teeth and dental care, and I'm curious if you were trying to reverse the reputation or where that fits into your psyche around this company.
Yeah, I think you've just stolen my main joke for that usually comes up in the storytelling itself. So. Yeah, no, the irony is definitely not lost on me that I'm a Brit with honestly pretty below average teeth trying to change oral care in America. So yeah.
See,
Yeah.
I sort of envision that you have these like impeccable chompers because you started this company. So not so much?
No, I now have extremely healthy teeth, which is obviously the most important thing. And maybe that's getting deep into the kind of the brand mission, but. Very healthy teeth, not the straightest teeth. Maybe I'll get back to changing that one day again.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, let's start with the basics then.
Yeah.
What is Quip?
We're an oral care service, and we're looking to really just help people with the entirety of their oral care routine. From the products they use at home every day, all the way through, ultimately to the professional care that they should be having at least twice every year. People certainly know us best at the moment for our electric toothbrush and its kind of connected brush head delivery service and subscription and toothpaste service and subscription. But ultimately, we're looking to really help you with the whole of your oral care.
Well, so I know you've got big visions here and one that sort of expands beyond just toothbrushes, but let me actually dig in there for a moment.
Yeah.
Because some people may not even be that familiar with that component of it, this concept of toothbrush delivery.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of where we figured was the most important place and really just easy to understand place to start. But yeah, look, Quip started after a dental visit that I had, I think it was Christmas 2012. So This was a long time ago now. At least it feels it, when subscriptions weren't just kind of a fashion thing that everyone tried to put on top of everything. Mm-hmm. I was basically showing a couple of the same bad brushing habits that as the dentist pointed out that day, that most people have. For me, it was that I was brushing my teeth far too hard. Mm-hmm. The dentist explained that there's many misconceptions in oral care. One of those was that almost because we've been sold these products and these services that are all about power brushing, power this, power that, the stronger the better, people think that brushing is all about this powerful way of brushing things off your teeth. And it's the opposite. You should be focusing on, it's not about rubbing off stains. That's a tiny part of it. It's more about getting your bristles in your gum line. So anyway, he started to, what it's like when you're in a dentist chair, you can't really say much. So I sat there for about 50 minutes with my mouth open, listening. And really what he was saying was, look, there's these basic habits that really matter to your oral health. Some of the examples being brushing for 2 minutes, brushing twice a day, flossing, changing your brush head when it's worn out, and visiting the dentist every 6 months. And he's like, the problem is that people get those basic things that matter the most more wrong than anything else.
Yeah.
One of the things he brought up among many was that people weren't changing their toothbrush when it was worn down and just not working anymore. And so when myself and my co-founder sat there looking at the problems in the industry and how we solve them as designers, one of those was that people weren't changing their brush head on time. And we just sat there and said, well, the only way you can really do that is essentially by someone turning up at your house and
Right.
making you do it that day. And that's where the idea for mailing you a brush head on time or at a schedule came from. But it all was an origin from these basic habits that people weren't getting right, weren't invested enough in oral care to kind of, just try and get right. And the big companies out there at the time weren't focusing on these basic habits because, they can be pretty simple and affordable things to change. And, businesses aren't always focused on the simple, affordable things in the market.
Right. Well, that's actually what's so interesting to me about this business and what seems so distinct is most businesses set out to build a product that somehow solves a problem that other products don't solve. And you've kind of done that, but what you're really focusing on is how do you actually change human behavior more than just build a better toothbrush.
Yeah, actually, it's been interesting in the last few weeks talking about the kids brush launch that we just did because, these habits form early. They form supposedly by about the age of 9, you've really set in most of your core good or bad habits. And so it's interesting. The real fix is actually getting kids up to that age to get those basics right, not just in oral health, of course, but in oral health's case, get those basic things right. And then it's easy to, to maintain them through life. Of course, most people don't have them right. And so, yeah, we set out to kind of solve what is always one of the hardest things, which is changing habits. The biggest thing for us, and this was what, honestly, again, that first dental visit taught me, was that changing habits is extremely hard in an area or an industry where people really do not like and they don't enjoy. And oral care, brushing is at best a chore for most people. Dental visits are a phobia. When you're trying to change habits in a space that's from chore to hated, it's challenging. And I think that's obviously where our design backgrounds, we felt at least, was going to be our differentiator.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm about to say it. How do you go from pulling teeth to get someone to care about their dental hygiene?
Yeah, I really think it comes down to, I was a designer. Bill, my co-founder, was also an industrial designer. We genuinely sat there at the beginning and got excited because we saw a health area where, in our opinion, having a true user-centric design approach could help fix the true kind of health problem in front of us. We didn't start off saying what would create an incredible business model. We basically said, this is a huge problem. Everyone has a mouth. People are getting these basic things wrong. And so for us, it was just, let's create something that's telling that story. Like basically it's just re-educating you on things you kind of already knew.
Yeah.
And it just came through from that kind of simple, honest, accessible design. And we said, look, it's not about all the stuff that you're being told it's about. It's really about these basics, and we're going to be honest about that. We're going to educate you again about that, and we're going to create a product and a system and a service that focuses just on that. And by doing that, we can make it more simple and we use the word enjoyable, and I think that's obviously to some people a stretch in oral care, but at minimum desirable. If we can make oral care desirable, we can get you to start wanting to change those habits, and that's kind of been the approach.
What were some of those design choices that you made? It is really interesting that you came from a design background to build a better product.
Yeah, I mean, there were many. I mean, brand and branding was a huge part of that, and voice, and how we spoke to people was a massive part. When we looked at the industry, we looked at how it's made up of these products that you use every day, these, dental services, this content, this advice. We very quickly realized that it's probably going to be challenging to start with the most hated area, of dental visits. And probably a lot easier to start to get people engaged on a product that everyone has, everyone uses hopefully twice a day, but it's an object you can get kind of attached to and like. So that's why we started with the toothbrush. What was interesting actually was that we did the opposite of what, again, most people do when they try and create a buzz or a new company in a space. Most people look for that one big selling point, and they try and kind of pin the marketing kind of around that. When we did our research as to why people were not upgrading to an electric, It was actually multiple small things that were annoying.
Huh.
It was part price, it was part the size, it was part the feeling in your mouth, it was part the charging stand. It was honestly about 20 different things, and even when surveying, there was no clear kind of winner above all. And so we said, well, that's what it is. We need to make all these small changes to this object, and ultimately that will create this kind of very different feeling around it, of owning it, of buying it, of maintaining it. And so, we didn't reinvent the wheel. We actually took out features you didn't need. In doing so, you could make it more affordable. You could make it more simple. You could get rid of the charging stand. It was very much focusing on those habits that mattered the most, talking to dentists, like what do they really care about? What really helps people brush better? And then when we got that, we could make a much more simple, more desirable product.
That is so antithetical to what you hear. I mean, you hear focus, and the fact that you took on everything to make a different product is pretty interesting. So after launching, how have customers influenced your product and how you sell?
Yeah, honestly, hugely. And I think that's obviously a huge advantage of having that direct relationship with your members. Even in the early days, the products look the same, generally speaking, from the outside. I mean, to most eyes, it looks identical to what it did on that first day. The truth is, we've probably made easily 100 changes to various different pieces, some on the inside, some on the outside, the cover. There's been so many small little touches that just by having that direct relationship, being able to be in conversation with our members, and reacting to feedback, whether that be, through just general CX conversations or again, surveying and talking to our members. We've really changed so much of it just to keep improving the general experience.
Right.
I think when it got really exciting was actually with this kids launch. We actually took a sample of, I believe, around 50 kids. Most of the users we worked with were actually people that had told us, during the last few years that they wanted a kids brush. And so we literally reached out to our members, and ultimately we did testing from everything from in-home testing, how they use their current toothbrushes, how they enjoyed their Quip's adult as it were, or original toothbrush. Then we, used them for, I think prototypes is the wrong word in a way, but, early versions of the kids brush, 3 phases of testing over months and months where we're able to use that member base that we had to do everything from surveys to live, real user testing, and even that kind of final pre-production check to see what really resonated, what were the stories coming out of that, even to help inform marketing, and it really did.
More from Simon after this quick break.
Howl at the Moon is a live music bar, the kind that brings stadium stompers to you every night. And if you're April Bokiri, the company's national marketing manager, there's only one tune that can quench your thirst.
It depends on how drunk I am, but probably Don't Stop Believin'.
The company started out with a couple of dueling pianos, but as their choice in instruments grew, so too did the company.
We're currently in 15 locations nationwide and growing.
I'm not going to downplay it. Scaling that type of operation, it took a lot.
We needed a ton of different marketing tools in order to complete our regular marketing tasks. So we would have to sign into a different account every time we wanted to do something.
Howl at the Moon's marketing needed to tune up, so April brought on HubSpot.
I think it just makes my job easier to be able to tie in everything into one campaign and be able to show people that work above me, the revenue brought in from that campaign and that sort of thing.
But there was one feature that took April by surprise. You see, the company's website could do something that, in person or by phone, might have been a bit more difficult, with the speakers turned to 11. I'm talking about live chat. Messaging tool, bottom right-hand corner of your website. Live chat lets you have personalized conversations with people stopping by your site. And April figured she had it pegged.
We thought we would just get the random questions like, what time do you open? Or I left my coat there, that kind of thing.
Instead, what she found was a whole new way to convert leads, close more deals, and provide even better support for her customers.
But it's really cool because we've been able to get a lot of last minute party bookings, and we've been able to pass them along to our sales team.
Live chat's basically like having your own private will call booth on your website without any of the whole cost thing. Because HubSpot's live chat, it's free.
Awesome.
So if you're in the crowd tonight, have a drink on me. Check out more stories from our customers at HubSpot.com/customerlove. HubSpot. Grow better.
Let me talk with you a little bit about a transition that you recently made with the business where you moved from being solely a direct-to-consumer company to a company that is still direct-to-consumer but also sells through retail stores, namely Target. You talked a little bit earlier about how important the brand experience and the relationship with understanding the customer is. Do you give any of that up when you start to sell through a retailer?
I think there's a lot to consider when going into retail, because you're naturally literally giving up, or in theory, as per the question, you giving up some of those things. And honestly, the reason why we kind of chose Target as that first partner is that we were looking for how do we replicate what we do online in this critical channel. And I think extremely important to know is like it was always in the plan. And if we're going to fulfill our mission of being accessible to all, we are all about every mouth. Accessibility is our top pillar. At the end of the day, most people don't go online to look for their toothbrush. They're shopping, in their weekly or their monthly shop, and they're picking up their oral care products, as they do that. And so we need to go and meet people where they are if we're going to fulfill our accessibility mission. Interestingly also is that in retail, it's even more apparent the big jump in particularly price point from that manual brush to the electric world. It's often $5 to $50 is the jump. And so again, like we're bringing this accessible price range product into this market. It really does compound that kind of accessibility piece. So it was always an important thing for us. But as you said, like the critical thing was how do we replicate the big advantages of going direct to consumer online in retail? And I think, controlling that brand message and story was absolutely critical. And honestly, Target had shown with previous launches with D2C companies or traditional, what's the word now? Digitally native companies. Changes every year. I feel like I hate all those words.
I know.
They'd shown that they were able to take great care of brands, and that they also themselves have got a very well loved, honestly, brand. And I think that that made us feel very safe and excited actually about how we could very much continue to tell that brand story in the way that we wanted to, even in that kind of offline world. Of course, it was a whole, it was a whole new world for us. How do we do that on packaging? How do we do that in end cap? In inline displays? How do we bring that world of online there? And so it was a big learning curve for us, but we felt very safe about that aspect. The challenging part for sure is, how do we get after discovering Quip, in Target offline? How do we then bring you into the online world of Quip?
That's right.
Changing habits, as we said, is hard. And if your habit is throwing a bunch of brush heads in your cart, I was going to say trolley. I'm using some English words, but if the habit is throwing your brush heads, in your cart alongside your toothbrush and you buy it, you're not going to change that if we give you that option. And so, we decided to only offer refills of the brush head still through our online, getquip.com world.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And that's a way that, we figured, and we did a lot of research into how that'd be received. And as soon as we tied the reason for us doing that to the convenience, the added affordability, the education, and all the other pieces of the benefits to the online world, everyone we surveyed before the launch was like, yeah, of course, why wouldn't I? That's way better. Of course I want it to come on time. Of course I want it to be free shipping. I don't want to have to go back and kind of load up with brush heads that I'm going to throw in my storage and forget. So it's an interesting thing to watch happen and see those retail users come into that online world and then get that close relationship that we do with everyone that starts in our online platform.
Were you nervous about it, just personally? Making that decision, talking with your team and your co-founders.
The decision to go in retail, not at all. I think it was just a no-brainer for us. And again, I think I don't know this to be a fact, but I do think there's a perception that you almost should feel guilty about doing that if you are a digitally native brand. We just don't think like that. I think we're just trying to solve a problem, and we're going to go in the places we think we need to solve that problem. Was I nervous on launch day to see how it was received? Yeah, of course. It was a whole new world.
Did you go to a Target and just like follow people around the store to see what they did?
Yeah.
That's what I would do.
Yeah, we had I think we had like a Target day in the office, and then a lot of us went to the local Target in I can't remember the area, Atlantic Terminal, I think is the one.
Just the strange man, creepily kind of like readjusting all the aisles.
Exactly.
So I do think that this transition, it's really interesting, the point that you make about accessibility, and that does seem to be a limitation of direct-to-consumer channels, and that you kind of have to go where the people are if you're trying to solve a broader behavioral issue. How, as you've evolved this product, as you've gotten into stores, do you see retail itself changing, adapting more to some of the D2C type ways, or otherwise learning from each other?
Yeah, no, completely. And I think that is a reason why retailers in general are interested. Well, I think it's very well known that retailers are thinking about how they better do online. And so I'm not going to speak for them, but I think there's a lot of interest in all of them from learning about the online brands. And so it ends up being this really interesting relationship where each learns about each other's world, and then, in the end, I think we create a better experience for the customer or the consumer or the member or the guest, depending on on what word you use.
Are the consumers themselves different? If you find someone who has discovered you online versus someone who discovered you for the first time in a Target aisle, are those two people that fundamentally different, or are people just people?
We did a lot of work to kind of survey members, and we just found that the attitudes and the feedback that we would get was just the same. It was identical. Like, the comments were just the same as we get online. They were saying, it's far more convenient to get things delivered. It's far more convenient, especially if something is on a routine. But at the same time, it's far more common to discover oral care products, in a big box retailer or in a pharmacy or whatever it is. So,
right.
I said everyone has a mouth. That's like this internal and sometimes external mantra that we talk about a lot. That's the way we've always seen it. And so we designed Quip, both the physical products, but also the brand, to be something that we believe is appealing across demographics, across age ranges, across sexes and everything. And it's really proven to be that.
Sure. Is it more difficult to stand out in store or online?
Oh, that's a great question. To talk to retail, I guess, the brands that have been there forever, a lot of the features, let's say, in the oral care space that we've all been sold on over the last 20 years, as it were, as being the best possible, whatever feature or mode or bristle for your teeth, a lot of that's designed, and I know this is a designer that's seen some of these briefs, a lot of that's designed for to be discovered on shelf and to win that shelf war, as it were.
Right.
How can we make this big claim? How can we put this big graphic? But I think what that did was it just created this kind of arms race for those features, those kind of gimmicks, those kind of buzzy things that stand out on shelf. But everyone looked the same. It all was saying the same thing. Everyone's saying they're the best possible toothbrush or toothpaste or whatever it was, and so that kind of drowns itself out. But you have this kind of sea of the same looking thing, which is just big badges shouting big things at you. So for us in retail, it felt extremely easy to stand out. We focus on this habit. So we have this very clean, white, negative space packaging, which instantly stands out as being extremely different. It's white, which for some reason in oral care, everything seems to be blue or obviously red. And so physically and graphically, it was easy to stand out. One thing that we did invest heavily in was the physical shape, actually, of the retail box itself. And we kind of did this shape that's very hard to do, and it's actually never really been done before on mass scale. But I think people are used to, big brands are used to kind of driving for just low cost at all cost. And we were like, no, we need to stand out. We're going to put the effort in. We're going to invest the money in making this unique packaging. And so even with this simple white look, we've got this very unique physical shape and design on the shelf that in itself kind of stands out a lot, even if it were next to another very simple packaging. And so I think it's just that kind of investment, again, in design and understanding the power that has.
Yeah. So I want to move on and talk a little bit about, today and the future, because you're going through another kind of really interesting transformation with the business. So recently, Quip purchased Foray, which is a membership-based alternative to dental care with preventative cleanings, x-rays, exams, and so forth.
Yeah.
Very different from the consumer product company of toothbrushes for adults and kids.
Yeah.
you're in the insurance game now too? Why?
Yeah, yeah. The more controversial answer there is that insurance in oral care it's a bit of a funny word because often you're not really insured, as it were, against the big treatments. The caps on many insurances that most people have are actually extremely low, meaning that, once you've had your covered basic things like your exams, your x-rays, your cleanings, maybe a filling here or there, if you have a root canal in that same year, you're paying a lot out of pocket. Typically, of course, not in every single plan.
Yes.
Insurance is complicated, it's expensive, and it's horrible. And so it was just, again, like a no-brainer from the beginning that we've always been building a product and a service in that space. The acquisition just helped us it allowed us to really accelerate our own efforts in that space. That's what we're so excited about, is tying that full space together, because it is so true that the way you brush your teeth at home every day is absolutely linked and is the most impactful thing on how expensive and painful those dental visits are, and the reverse. And so they are connected, and it's kind of crazy to us that they've never been connected in that way before. And so, we're extremely excited about doing that.
Well, it feels like with Aphora, there's so many different ways you could go with this now. I mean, it opens it up to so many different products and areas. What's your vision for growing the company from this point forward?
Honestly, I'm pretty open when talking about it. And maybe this is a boring answer, but we are helping you and almost taking off of your hands your oral care. We want to be accessible to everyone, and we're certainly building this platform in a way that doesn't say, hey, if you're not using all of our things, we're not going to help. We're not going to help you. No, we're definitely building this platform in a way that says, 70% of the country has insurance already. You might have that insurance. We're not going to not work with you and not make that experience everything we can do to help everything, maybe apart from that one piece, better. And so we're not trying to create kind of a walled elitist garden. We're doing the opposite. We're trying to build a platform that helps link all of these things together better.
Let me ask you this final question. Your parents weren't dentists. You didn't, have a best friend who loved brushing his or her teeth growing up, as I'm assuming. Did all of this really stem from one transcendent moment in a dentist chair?
Yeah, I know. I think people think I made that up because it sounds like a genuine story, but it very much is.
I think the immediate follow-up question is, where is that dentist now? And does he know all about this business?
I hope he knows about. He knows about the business. Otherwise, we're not doing our job too well. No, look, I think from right at the beginning, we understood that the industry, the professionals, and not just dentists, the hygienists, the orthodontists, everyone in this profession are so important. They are the key. And really what we're doing at Quip is we're trying to make their message and their products and their services just more consumer friendly. And that's what we're doing. That is at the crux of that's the opposite way of looking at what we're doing. That's essentially what we say to the provider world that we are doing and we're helping them with. And so the second that, I went to that dentist and I left and I spoke about this oral care area as a interesting problem with my co-founder, Bill, instantly we brought on kind of almost like an unofficial advisory board of dentists that we just look to for advice, on how we built this from the beginning. We hired two full-time dentists extremely early on. I think they were hire number 11 and 12, which is crazy for a team of our size. So we knew how important they were because we did not come from that world. But then on the flip side, the reason we also got to where we have is almost because we didn't come from that world, because we were the consumer. And so I think that tension of me being ultimately a consumer, a patient, and then instantly from day zero, originating the entire concept, all our values, all our basic things that we focused on with providers, with dental professionals, and then working with them and hiring them and building this network. That tension, I think, is helped us get where we are now, because I think a lot of companies are either on one side, purely professionals thinking as professionals, or maybe on the other side, so many startups are consumers thinking like consumers and thinking they're better than the professionals. I think you need both.
Yeah, it really is a unique mission. I so appreciate you taking the time to share it with us.
No, it's been a pleasure talking about it. Thank you.
Today's episode was written and produced by Matthew Brown. I want to try a quick social experiment. You in? If you haven't turned me off just yet, I'm taking that as nonverbal affirmation. Okay. See the person next to you? Yes, that person. Casually, not creepily, lean over and tell him, hey, you should check out this podcast I'm listening to called The Growth Show. Go ahead. I'll be here. Are you new best friends? Keep talking. I'll stop ranting. I'll be back on Friday to talk to you about my favorite film. Okay. Until then, I'm Megan Keeney Anderson, and thanks for listening.